Imagine holding a pencil, ready to create something from nothing. Would you rather create something randomly or randomly create the Mona Lisa while trying to draw? Beneath every great drawing lies a structure, a system, unseen yet deeply felt. These are the seven principles of drawing, the silent forces behind every stroke, every shadow, and every story. Master them, and you'll no longer draw randomly. You'll randomly draw masterpieces. The essence of observation is not just looking or seeing, it is observing and understanding the subject. Understanding the form, the structure, light, texture, and all sorts of subtleties. It's training your eyes to recognize the invisible connections that shape what we see. Observation is what transforms a sketch from a guess into a revelation. It's about understanding how a light reveals, how shadows deepen, and how objects relate in space. Without it, we're not drawing, we're just assuming. A great artist once told me, before you draw something, walk around it, touch it, feel it, talk to it, and maybe then you will be ready to draw it. Observation changed how I live completely. I no longer sit in a room bored. I observe the world around me, the still life objects, strangers' faces, their expressions all waiting to reveal itself. Once you've observed and studied all the different elements of your subject, the next question is, how will you compose it? Will you keep it exactly as it is, or will you take charge, rearranging, removing, or adding elements to convey a story? Composition is how you arrange what you see. It's the silent conductor guiding the viewer's eye, deciding what they feel and why. A well composed drawing is not random, it's intentional, like a song. It has a rhythm, silence, movement, and harmony. Too many artists overcrowd their pages, mistaking clutter for depth. Others leave too much space and the story falls apart. Composition is storytelling. It asks, what do you want the viewer to feel? Where should they look first? It's not necessarily about adding or subtracting elements. It's about knowing what to keep and what to let go. In music, silence is part of the melody. In drawing, negative space could be part of the image. One of the greatest demonstrations of intelligent composition is Velázquez's Las Meninas. The painting is not just admired for its technical brilliance, but for how its composition immerses the viewer in the scene. The Infanta becomes the focal point, yet our eye is pulled outward and toward Velázquez himself at the easel. The attendants are surrounding the princess, the open doorway that suggests infinite space, and finally the mirror at the back that reflects the king and queen. It's a masterclass in balance and rhythm, foreground, midground, and background, all woven together seamlessly. Every placement is deliberate, guiding us through layers of reality and illusion until we feel less like an observer and more like a participant standing inside the room. Proportion is the relationship between parts. It's what makes a figure feel real, a bottle balanced, or a chair believable. Without proportion, even the most beautiful lines collapse into distortion. But proportion is not about measuring with rulers. It's about training the eye to compare relationships. How tall is this compared to that? How wide is this compared to that? It's a constant dialogue, big versus small, long versus short. When proportion is right and the drawing breathes with life, when it's wrong, the viewer feels it instantly, even if they can't explain why. Great proportion is not perfection, it's a balance. It's the harmony that convinces the eye, yes, this belongs. Proportion becomes instinct, built through years of practice. Eventually, you won't need to measure, you will feel instantly when something is off. And if something feels wrong in your drawing, but you can't tell what, check the proportions. They never lie. That's why Raphael's School of Athens is considered a masterpiece of proportion. The architecture unfolds in perfect one point perspective, drawing the eye straight to Plato and Aristotle at the center. Each figure is scaled with mathematical harmony, no matter how close or far they stand. Groups of philosophers balance one another like weights on a scale, creating rhythm and unity across the vast scene. Raphael wasn't just painting philosophers, he was a painting proportion itself. The painting becomes a living example of harmony, and balance, and order, the very principles the philosophers studied. Perspective is what gives drawing life. It creates space, depth, and realism, turning flat images into believable worlds. At first, it feels technical, vanishing points, horizon lines, grids. But in truth, perspective is poetic. It's the art of distance, of things fading, of worlds receding into space. Think of a road stretching to the horizon, or a cathedral ceiling rising above you. Perspective tells the viewer not only where things are, but also where they lead. At first, perspective feels rigid, mathematical, intimidating, but once understood, it becomes a freedom. You will be able to build entire worlds that feel grounded, even if they're imaginary. To master drawing, you must first master space. Everything you see is just a puzzle of planes and angles. Learn to see them, and you can draw anything. Massachusetts, the Holy Trinity, is the perfect proof of this truth. Painted around 1427, it was one of the very first works to use a true one point perspective. Massachu aligned the entire composition to a single vanishing point at eye level, so the painted architecture recedes with mathematical precision. What looks like a flat church wall suddenly opens up into a vast stone chamber with a coffered ceiling stretching far above Christ. The brilliance is not only technical, it's emotional. The illusion of depth draws the viewer inward, placing them within the sacred space itself. For the first time, divine figures were not floating on gold backgrounds, but standing inside a believable architecture, grounded in the same space as the observer. This was a revolutionary, heaven brought down to earth through perspective. Light was born to reveal, shadow to challenge it. They dance across every object, shaping how we see and what we feel. Value. The range between light and dark is what gives form its volume. It's how a sphere becomes round. It's how a face glows with life or fades into mystery. Many beginners rely on outlines, but the real world has no outlines. It's a value that defines everything. Value teaches us that nothing exists without contrast. A face glows only because of the shadow beneath the cheekbone. A glass looks fragile because of the shimmer of light it steals from its surroundings. To master value is to master atmosphere. It's how we create a mood, drama, and focus. Light is not just brightness, it's direction, softness, harshness, and reflection. Shadow is not emptiness, it's a depth, it's a mystery, and it's a grounding. A drawing without a value is a skeleton. A drawing with value lives. When I was younger, I asked, how do I make my drawings more realistic? And the answer was simple. Stop drawing lines. Start drawing values. And nowhere is this truth more alive than in Caravaggio's The Calling of Saint Matthew. In that painting, most of the room lies hidden in a shadow. The men sit cloaked in darkness until a subtle shaft of light cuts across the scene, falling on Matthew at the very instant of recognition. That single beam of value doesn't just shape the figures, it tells the story. Light becomes grace itself, entering the ordinary world, transforming it. This is the true power of value, not only to model form, but to direct attention, to reveal meaning, to make us feel. That is why a Caravaggio's masterpiece lives on, not as paint on canvas, but as light breaking into darkness. In drawing, every line is a decision. The amateur fills the page with noise, scribbles, hesitations. The master learns restraint. Economy of lines is the discipline of saying more with less. It's about choosing the essential, the curve that defines the gesture, the shadow that implies form. A single mark that is intentional is more powerful than a thousand hesitant. Every stroke should serve a purpose and nothing wasted, nothing excessive. It's not laziness, it's wisdom. The greatest artists spent years learning to draw everything so they could later draw almost nothing and still capture everything. A line well placed is not just a decoration, it's a poetry. In just a drawing, this is everything. You're not drawing anatomy, you're capturing energy, posture, mood, and the story. However, economy of lines doesn't mean we are on budget, but it means finding the perfect balance. Albrecht Dürer's Melancholia first is a perfect example of this mastery. Though filled with a symbolic detail, every line feels deliberate and necessary. Nothing is accidental. The folds of the rope, the etched geometry, the tools scattered across the floor, all are described with just the right amount of mark making. The lines never compete with one another. Instead, they work together to balance density and emptiness, chaos and order. That precision of economy is what makes the work endlessly powerful. And honestly, we could spend hours talking about these masterpieces. Each one is like a universe layered with secrets, details, and stories that go far beyond just a single reason why they're considered great. It's never just one thing, it's everything woven together. That's why I've been thinking of creating a separate series where I break down these masterpieces in depth, piece by piece, uncovering what makes them timeless. If that's something you would love to see, let me know in the comments. I would be excited to bring that series to life. In the end, every drawing tells a story. Sometimes it's grand, a scene of triumph, love, or despair. Sometimes it's quiet, a cup resting on a table, a face lost in thought. Storytelling is the invisible current beneath all art. It asks, why does this matter? What am I really trying to say? What do you want your viewer to feel? Curiosity, nostalgia, tension, joy. Every line, every space, and every choice leads them there. Even in still life, there is a narrative, a cracked vase, a wilted flower, a half eaten fruit. They whisper about time, about memory, about life itself. Without a story, a drawing is a decoration. With a story, it becomes meaning. And meaning is what lingers in the heart of the viewer long after the image fades from their eyes. Have you ever wondered how a simple painting can sell for millions? Well, it's because of the story it tells and the way it connects with the audience. I consider storytelling, that one ring to rule them all. It breaks all the other principles if necessary, and normally you need to know the rules to break them perfectly. And perhaps no painting embodies this more than Hieronymus Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights. At first glance, it's overwhelming, a surreal landscape filled with hundreds of tiny figures, animals, and impossible structures. But that chaos is exactly what makes its storytelling so powerful. It doesn't hand you a single simple meaning. Instead, it unfolds like a dream, or perhaps a warning, layer by layer. On the left, paradise and innocence. In the center, earthly pleasures and temptations. On the right, the grotesque descent into hell. Three acts of a story told not with words, but with a vision. Bosch weaves morality, mystery, and imagination into a single sprawling narrative that still captivates people centuries later. That is the power of storytelling in art. It transforms images into worlds. I really hope I've made my point clear. These seven principles aren't just rules, they're philosophies. They don't restrict your creativity, they reveal it. Together, they guide you from uncertainty all the way to mastery. Drawing isn't about shortcuts or just raw talent. It's about understanding, intention, and patience. Art is both a science and poetry, a structure and freedom. And through these principles, we take simple marks and turn them into something truly extraordinary. So remember, these aren't rules made up by some random guy. They come from masters who understood the heart of creating masterpieces, learned them, practiced them, and used them to unlock your own creative magic. When we talk about masterpieces in Western art, few works stand taller than Michelangelo's creation of Adam. It's one of the most recognized images in human history. But what makes it so iconic, so powerful, and so enduring? Michelangelo's creation of Adam is a painting that feels inevitable, as if it could only ever exist in this exact way. The moment we look at it, we aren't analyzing anatomy, perspective, or balance. We're simply struck by the poetry of two hands suspended in a space that carries the weight of creation itself. Adam's body is rendered with a naturalism that feels effortless, reclining as if he has always been there, waiting. Across from him, God surges forward in a whirlwind of movement, ropes and angels swept up in a divine energy. The composition feels like a cosmic pole, everything directing us toward that almost touch. What's remarkable is how simple the image is. There is no clutter, no excess. The economy of line, the restraint of detail, the harmony of values, all of these serve to heighten the story without announcing themselves. We don't marvel at Michelangelo's technical skill for its own sake. We marvel at how invisible that skill becomes, how it disappears into pure storytelling. That's why it's a masterpiece, not because it checks the boxes of, great art, but because it transcends them. It speaks to us on levels we can't always articulate, reminding us that the greatest masterpieces don't just depict, they resonate. They leave us with awe, with mystery, with the sense that we've glimpsed into something bigger than ourselves.